I've probably analyzed tens of thousands of sites in my SEO career. At one time, I ran a high-end SEO community with thousands of members. Hundreds of people would show up to my office hours weekly, and I do multiple website analyzations every single session. Not to mention doing my own analysis every day just for fun. Hundreds of sites a week I'd analyze. And although I don't analyze as much as I used to because I typically get the same data over and over and over again, I will do it still. And almost every time I analyze a site, I can tell you exactly what is going on. I can tell you exactly why a site is ranking. I can tell you exactly why a site is not ranking, or at least give a good idea on either account. And usually I have the answer within like 30 seconds. Sometimes it takes a few minutes, depending on the complexity. But every once in a while, I'd surprise people. They would point out a site and they'd ask me, why is that site ranking? And of course, I would do my simple analysis and I'd tell them, I have no idea. Those are always the ones that bothered me the most, by the way, because I always wanted to give my students the answers to help them in their journey. Over the years, I've realized that there's a reason that I couldn't answer or find the answer sometimes. To this day, 20 years in now, sometimes I just don't have a clear answer of why. But I did some testing over the last many years, which has given me pretty conclusive evidence. Evidence that randomization is very much a part of the Google algorithm. This is extremely important. I learned just how important this is to understand after coaching thousands of students. I'll get to that in just a second, but let me talk about the testing first. Now, when I found profitable niches, I would build armies of sites. And these days, I still do the same thing, but because I almost always use all age domains, I can't count these towards the randomization testing. Because, with age domains, you get so many other variables involved that it's nearly impossible to test something like whether or not randomization is present in the algorithm or not. But years ago, I would just build armies of EMD-style domains. So I actually got to test this somewhat inadvertently while profiting at the same time. But I would build, 5, 10, 20, sometimes even more of these sites all at once. And they would all have the same optimization, right? The same style of links, the same anchor text styles, the same setup, everything the same. But the movement and the rankings could be totally different across the board. Now, eventually, almost all the sites hit the target level. But the interesting part was that some may do it in 3 months when some would take a year, even though I started them at the same time. And out of a batch of 20 sites, there may actually be a couple of them that get lost in the rankings, where they just never end up ranking where they should have. Again, most would eventually get there. Whether it took 3 months or 12 months, they would eventually get there. But here and there, a site just wouldn't rank like it should have. And this isn't something that just happened like once or twice. I've built many kind of waves of sites last decade especially where I saw the same thing over and over. The same pattern. A pattern of inconsistency at the micro level, right? But overall, a consistency at the macro level. So what I mean by that is there is a lot of inconsistency in the journey to the top, but there's a lot more consistency in the end result. So the site eventually gets to where I expect it to, right? Most of the time. But the road to that can be very different. And every once in a while, there seems to be a dead end, right, that happens. That's the sites that kind of don't rank where they should have. I think this is extremely important because generally, the SEO community kind of gives you precise expectations when it comes to SEO. And unfortunately, I think many leaders in the SEO community let the ego side get in the way of giving people an honest answer sometimes. And I get that we always want to be right as people. I get that. And if you're a leader in the SEO community, you're expected to kind of always have the answer, right? You're the expert. But look, sometimes the right answer is, I don't know. Although I believe that the randomization factor is a small part of the algorithm. But in certain situations, it can add up to play a large part. I almost look at it like rolling dice. So let's say the lucky number is 7. If you roll the dice 100 times, most people are likely going to hit 7 about 9 times. There's 11 possibilities to hit with a dice roll, 7 being one of them. 100 rolls divided by 11 possibilities equals about 9. So most people will be right around 9, give or take a couple hits. But some people are going to get extremely unlucky and roll 0 sevens with 100 rolls. Some people are going to get extremely lucky and hit 20, 30, 40, maybe even more 7 rolls out of 100. It's not going to happen often, but it is going to happen from time to time. And this is exactly how I look at the randomization in the algorithm. Sometimes it's going to work for you, sometimes it's going to work against you. But most of the time, 95% of the time, you're somewhere in the middle. And in rare times, it can really help you or it can really hurt you. So, why the hell would Google have randomization in their algorithm? If you've watched any of my other videos, you would better understand how simple Google's algorithm really is. At the micro level, yes, it's very, very complex. But at the macro level, it's extremely simple. Starting with the most simple part, on page. The biggest ranking factors by far are keyword in domain, URL, titles, and H tags. Now, of course, interlinking and topical relevance can be important, but I'm talking about the core factors. Well, if you have tens or hundreds of thousands of sites that all have virtually the same on-page optimization, how do you determine which ones get the spotlight and rank at the top? Yes, randomization will come into play, but what's the big factor? Links. It's the only way to majorly separate the thousands of sites that all have basically the same on-page optimization. Sure, then you have, quality of links and relevance of links and anchor text all coming into play, but that's the gist of the algorithm on a macro level. Proper on-page optimization and authority. It's really very simple at that macro level. If there was absolutely no randomization in the algorithm, the analysis would be easier than it already is. There wouldn't be that site here and there ranking where everyone is saying, what the hell is that doing here? Google wants that to happen here and there, so people get confused. The last thing Google wants is for people to manipulate the algorithm. So they don't want people to know how their algorithm works, and they definitely don't want people to know how simple it is. Randomization is one of the tools they use to do this, and I can say that with almost 100% certainty. And honestly, if I was Google, I would actually use randomization even heavier than they do in the algorithm. Then I would use things like CTR and user experience to decide if they get to stay ranking or not. So if a site ranks that did so because of some lucky randomization on top, but it gets good CTR and good user experience, keep it in the results. Keep people guessing. Now, if it gets there luckily and has bad CTR and bad user experience, drop it. Not a big deal. This is a really important concept for you to understand because there is no one size fits all when it comes to SEO. There is no certain or direct path. You have to be confident that if you follow the core principles, you're going to make it just about every time. And I know some people may complain about this. That's bullshit. I can do everything right and then end up not ranking if I'm unlucky with randomization. Unlikely, but yes, I believe that is possible. And Google doesn't give a shit. They already dominate the market share. They don't care about your little failed project, even though you did everything right. They don't care. You are a casualty of war in this situation. I never say this type of stuff to scare people. I just want to give people the real data so they can do with it what they will. And look, this data can be really helpful as you do more and more SEO. And as you start seeing sites acting totally different from one another, you can start knowing why. Sometimes it's a competition thing, right? Sometimes it's not randomization. Sometimes it's an authority thing. And then sometimes, it could be a little bit of a randomization thing in the algorithm. Now, make sure you like this video to help us with the YouTube algorithm. Throw me a comment and let me know your thoughts, and make sure you subscribe. Talk to you soon.